In the summer of 1858, the most powerful government on earth tried to run away from a smell. The British Parliament sat on the bank of the River Thames in a palace that had opened only a few years before. All that summer, members kept fleeing the rooms that faced the water. Committee meetings collapsed. Clerks pressed handkerchiefs to their faces and walked out. Someone finally ordered the great riverfront curtains, soaked in chloride of lime, a harsh chemical bleach, to hold back what was rising off the river. It didn't work. The smell was raw sewage. Millions of tons of it baking on the mud at low tide right under the windows of the men who governed a quarter of the planet. They talked openly about surrender, about packing up the government and moving upstream to Oxford, out of range. What they did instead was accidentally build a machine that a city of 9 million still runs on today. And they built it to solve the wrong problem entirely. For most of its history, London had no sewers for human waste. It had cesspits. Under nearly every house sat a brick-lined pit where the household's waste collected. Every so often a crew called night, soil men arrived after dark, dug the pit out by hand, and carted it off to farms outside the city, where it was sold as fertilizer. Grim work. But it was a closed loop, and the waste left the city. The system held for centuries. Then one invention broke it. The flush toilet. A flush toilet was a marvel for the person using it and a slow disaster for everyone downstream. Each flush sent gallons of water into a cesspit built to hold solids, not floods. The pits overflowed. And the overflow had somewhere to go because London sat on a buried network of old drains and covered over rivers, streams like the Fleet and the Tyburn, built to carry rainwater to the Thames and nothing else. The filth ran into them and they carried it straight to the river. Here is the trap that makes this whole story what it is. The Thames was not only where London's waste ended up, it was where London's drinking water came from. Private companies drew water straight out of the river and piped it into homes. The same stretch of water was the sewer and the tap at once. And the city was exploding. London swelled from 1 million people to 2.5 million in 50 years, the largest city the world had ever seen. By the 1850s, the river carried an estimated 40 million tons of waste a year. It had stopped being a river. It was an open drain that people drank from. The people drinking that water were dying in waves of a disease called cholera. Cholera is one of the fastest killers we know of. A healthy person can wake up fine and be dead by nightfall. It empties the body of fluid so violently that a victim's skin can turn a dull blue, grey, which is why Londoners called it the Blue Death. Across the epidemics that swept the city in the 1830s, 40s and 50s, it killed tens of thousands. Nobody knew what caused it. The accepted answer, believed by doctors and scientists and government alike, was miasma. The idea seemed reasonable enough. Disease came from bad air. A foul smell wasn't just unpleasant. The smell itself, the invisible vapor of rot and filth, was the thing that reached into you and made you sick. Breathe the stink, catch the death. One man was sure this was wrong. John Snow was a London physician respected enough to have given chloroform to Queen Victoria during childbirth. He believed cholera never traveled through the air at all. It moved through water. In 1854, he got his chance to prove it. A vicious outbreak tore through the Soho district, killing hundreds in days. Snow went house to house, marking on a map where the dead had lived, and the deaths clustered tight around one public water pump on Broad Street. He chased the contamination to its source, a baby sick with cholera, whose mother had rinsed the soiled nappies into a leaking cesspit 3 feet from the pump's well. Snow got the officials to take the handle off the pump. The story usually ends there. Handle off, outbreak stops, doctor's a hero. That's not what happened. The outbreak was already burning itself out when the handle came off, and Snow knew it and said so. He had the right answer. Almost no one believed him. 4 years later, weeks before the great stink-filled Parliament with the smell of the river, Jon Snow died, his theory still rejected. The great stink did what all the dying never had. It reached the nose of power. Cholera had killed the poor by the thousand for decades, and the government studied it and moved slowly. But the moment the river drove Parliament out of its own chambers, the response was instant. A bill to fund a complete sewer system for London, blocked for years over its cost, passed in 18 days. The engineer handed the job was Joseph Bazalgette. He ran the city's public works body, and he had already spent years watching his sewer designs rejected as too expensive. Now, with Parliament gagging behind its bleached curtains, he had the money and the mandate. What he built is why he belongs in a story about people who saw further than everyone around them. The plan was to stop sewage from reaching the middle of the Thames at all. Instead of letting waste pour into the river in the heart of the city, Bazalgette would catch it with a set of enormous new sewers running parallel to the water, intercepting the flow and carrying it miles east, past the city, where it could be released on the outgoing tide and swept out to sea. Then he did the thing he's remembered for. He worked out the size of pipe the city would need, taking the densest population London could ever plausibly reach, and the most generous amount of waste per person, and sized the tunnels for all of it. Then he doubled it. His reasoning was that you only build a thing like this once, and there is always the unforeseen. The scale is hard to hold in your head. Around 2 miles of great intercepting sewers, feeding more than 1,000 miles of smaller street sewers, most of it dug by hand, using 318 million bricks. The main tunnels were shaped like an egg standing on its narrow end, a shape that keeps the flow fast and scarring even when the sewer runs nearly empty. And he chose a barely proven new material, Portland cement, because unlike ordinary mortar, it hardened underwater and grew stronger with age. That decision to double everything and build it to outlast him is why brick laid in the 1860s still carries the sewage of 9 million people right now. And here's the strange part. Bazalgette didn't think he was stopping cholera. He thought he was getting rid of the smell. Because everyone still believed the smell was the killer. The system came to life through the 1860s. Then it was tested in the cruelest way possible. In 1866, cholera returned to London one last time. This outbreak behaved unlike any before it. It barely touched most of the city. Instead, it concentrated almost entirely in one district in the East End, the crowded streets around the River Lee between Aldgate and Bow. That district had one thing that set it apart. It was the one part of the city Bazalgette's new sewers hadn't reached yet, still tied to the old contaminated water, while everywhere else had been quietly cut off from it. The overwhelming majority of the 1866 cholera deaths fell inside that one unconnected pocket. Everywhere the new system reached, the disease found almost nothing to hold on to. This was the proof Jon Snow had died without ever seeing. He'd argued that pulling sewage out of the drinking water would end cholera, and here it was drawn across a whole city like a diagram. The neighborhoods wired into Bazalgette's sewers were shielded. The one that wasn't was slaughtered. And here's the irony the whole story was building toward. Bazalgette built his system to carry off a smell guided by a theory of disease that was flatly wrong. Snow held the theory that was right and died disbelieved. Yet the wrong idea and the right idea landed in the exact same place. Because whether you thought the danger was in the air or in the water, the cure was identical. Get the sewage away from the people. Bazalgette did the right thing for the wrong reason and proved the dead doctor correct. After 1866, cholera never came back to London. Not once. A disease that had killed tens of thousands simply stopped. To lay the largest of his sewers along the river, Bazalgette had to build out into the Thames itself, reclaiming a strip of land dozens of acres wide. That reclaimed ground is the riverbank Londoners walk today. The path along the water was built as the lid on a sewer. Go back to that summer in 1858. The government of an empire, hiding behind bleach, soaked curtains from the smell of its own river, talking about running away to Oxford. They thought they had a problem with the smell. What they had was the thing that would save the city and the ground it would stand on. The stink was never just cleaned up and forgotten. It got turned into a city.